to Frankly Speaking with Dr. Wade. This show was created for and inspired by the thousands of patients I've served. So it's time for me to speak up and speak out on their behalf. With a wide range of experts, we bring you weekly insights diving deep into topics of controversy to bust through the sugarcoating that keeps you and your family stuck in the mainstream. Hello, everybody. Today, I have a special guest with me. Her name is Manayan, and she is a holistic clinician, and she's currently out in the state of Oregon. That's all I'll say. She has been practicing. I'll let her tell a little bit more of her story, but the coolest thing is she is a holistic clinician that has quite a gift and talent to be able to help people nail down behind-the-scenes things that really aren't picked up in the mainstream medical model allopathically. In fact, they don't acknowledge the fact that that even exists. But that said, Anna is an author of this book called Escaping Your Low Energy Trap. It's a fantastic book. It's got some huge eye-openers regarding toxic load and detoxifying, and I think that's a big problem that we see, at least I see in my office. I've had some experience myself with my own health. And so without further ado, Anna, thanks so much for being here today, especially since your neighbor is practicing jazz and we had to delay the broadcast because of the drumming in the jazz next door, which is a really nice feature you have. But that said, thanks for being here with us today. I really appreciate it. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into what you're doing, and how that path has taken you to helping the patients you now serve that just find ways to find you?
I've always been interested since a child in the mechanism of disease. Excuse me. And I was looking at having been sick as a child with eczema and everything like that. It all started when I started to get mercury fillings. And my whole life changed. And I realized I wasn't born that way, so I wondered what happened to cause that to change. And so that's where I went to the traditional route into medical school, learned all the allopathic things, but then realized it wasn't giving me the answers as what was the mechanism of disease, even though I was in an MD PhD program studying pathology. So I left and out of disillusionment and completely walked away from medicine. And then I had my own health crisis and ended up getting an aha moment in discovering Chinese medicine, which looked at the mechanism of disease in one aspect. And I had to just bite the bullet, go for that. And that led me to understanding so many different areas of the body as to what were the triggers, and also functional medicine, where we can see a person having in a less than optimum issue that doesn't necessarily have a disease, but they can lead to disease if it's not being taken care of. So we look at certain markers of the body that way. And in my research, I constantly, with my patients, they've been my lab and my research. And every patient, if I didn't have an answer or understanding, I would travel all over the world to study with different people in drainage for homeopathics. In Canada, I studied drainage and miasms with experts to try to get answers as to what was causing a person to have a certain symptom, and why was one person able to deal with a supplement or a medication and another person, the same condition, was not. And that led me to research and develop a treatment protocol, which I've now trademarked, that has an effect on reprogramming the body's immune system. Because what we found out in the research is that the immune system can interfere with normal metabolism. So what we think we can eat, then it goes in and we're not aware of symptoms. We may not be actually using it the way we need to. And in fact, that nutritious substance can actually cause a toxic load to the body. And 2/3 of our modern medical issues, the American Medical Society says it's due to chronic inflammation. And that's due to lifestyle. And so it's what we're exposed to and what we eat. And that the immune system has to deal with on a daily basis. And so that led me to specialize in identifying where the immune triggers are for a person that's derailing your metabolism, from your brain chemistry to your hormones to your thyroid, adrenal function, digestive function, reproductive function. Your immune system is involved in all of that. Typically we think, oh, okay, your immune system is just going to fight for colds and viruses and bugs, and that's it. No, your immune system plays a big part in whether you're overweight, whether you have brain fog or not, whether your skin is full of patches. It has an effect in every division of the body that people don't really comprehend, and a lot of doctors don't understand and give acknowledgement to. In Western medicine, they're only looking at pretty much immune system where it's autoimmune. So your thyroid, you're sensitive to your own thyroid hormone, or you have autoimmune skin conditions or food allergies. But the immune system is quite silent in perpetuating an imbalance in the body that can eventually lead to disease, or it eventually leads to other chronic symptoms that there is no disease category for.
Can you speak to, I love that. Can you speak to, because I particularly, in our office, we see a ton of digestive, a lot of obviously chronic inflammation, but we are always looking to go upstream. Like, where is this coming from upstream? Where is the structural integrity being exhausted trying to just keep this thing going? And so as we work with them, one of the things you had said was just brilliant in how does the patient know or not know? I think that's where it's like we're talking foreign, so far out there, because everything comes back to the symptom and the pain versus, wait, if I'm recruiting my immune system to help break down food, and I'm eating healthy food that is, I'm supposed to take this B, I'm supposed to take D, I'm supposed to take a good fish oil, on and on and on. Can you speak to how that becomes toxic when we're putting good things into our body theoretically, yet our body, for whatever reason, and we can discuss that, like several of those reasons, but how that manifests in like an undercover subclinical disease process or chronic inflammation? Can you break that down a little more?
Yeah, the first way you can kind of identify this, if you're even as a patient, is if you've got some chronic condition where you say, oh, I'm sensitive to those B vitamins at the store. I'm sensitive to supplements. Now, that's a red flag to say that somehow your body isn't breaking that down or excreting it, or your immune system could be reacting to it because you feel you've got a reaction. So there's supplements that you can't handle. What we understand, without getting too technical, is that synthetic vitamins have to be converted in the liver. And if the liver it's juggling a lot of things, and if you were also born with a genetic defect that slows down your body's ability to process certain vitamins or detox, then that genetic defect slows down your metabolism for these things. It can slow down the clearance of drugs from your system, antibiotics. It can affect your body's ability to clear vitamins from your system, eliminate dead pathogens. So we have I have patients who are chronic candida, they're on medication, but they come see me because they can't take their medication that the doctor gave them because they have this sudden die-off and they get sick from the cure. What does that mean when you have sudden die-off? It's also showing the liver is not able to clear. So there are typical things. And if you have a repeated infection is another red flag. So you get rid of candida, it comes back. You get rid of a cold, it comes back. You get rid of gut issues and it comes back. Sometimes the immune system, in many cases, is weak to identifying that it's even there. And the immune system is also interfering with your body's ability to alkalinize. Why? Because it can be reacting to something as simple as sulfur, or it could be reacting to a cell salt. And if your immune system reacts to something, it prevents your body from accessing that nutrient so that you can metabolize that and actually use it. So I hope I'm not kind of going too far off in tangent here, but I'm trying to explain that if there are certain commonalities, if you see repetitive factors, you've got allergies to something all the time, and that never changes. That's because the immune system has been prompt, and now it's perpetuating that memory. And what I found in our research and how we treat patients is we have to improve the body's ability to detox. And so by doing that, we quiet down also inflammation in the body. And by quieting down inflammation, the white blood cells will now not pass on the memory when in 90 days when those white blood cells are ready to die. So there's an immune component to inflammation, and there's an immune component to how efficient your metabolism is. Are you digesting protein, sugar, and fat, vitamins and minerals? The immune system plays a part in all of that. And if it's reacting to that, if somebody says, I don't digest fats very well, guaranteed there's an immune reaction to some of those fats. And you can't just tiptoe away and say, I'm not going to eat certain fats, because you need fatty acids to make neurotransmitters. So now we have a person who's on depressive drugs or something to replace the fact that they can't get the nutrients in to make the neurotransmitters. So what we do is we go back in. It's kind of like Humpty Dumpty. You put the patient all back together again. You get them digesting protein, sugar, fats, vegetables, carbohydrates, minerals, and you make sure that they're in the proper balance. And then the body knows how to make a neurotransmitter. It starts to increase serotonin naturally. And we're able to wean people off of many medications that are just managing symptoms and not really changing the person's metabolic function to optimize their function, which is functional medicine. But my specialty is really looking at and identifying, is this patient toxic to the degree that it's actually, it's marshaling the white blood cells to interfere with your metabolism. And what kind of metabolism are we interfering with? I have women who have PMS and endometriosis and breast cancer issues. They're not detoxing their estrogen. Do you think immune system's involved in that? It is. It's involved in that. And it's not just a question of staying away from estrogenic factors in your diet and stuff. You actually have to get more efficient. And can you become more efficient at detoxing these things if you've got certain genetic tendencies that slow down the liver's ability to detox? Yes, because there is something called a methylation pathway. It's these little wheels that are biochemistry. There are shortcuts to the wheel, and even if a person has a very bad, like homozygous defect that prevents them from using certain nutrients that the liver needs, there are shortcuts and bypasses that happen that can be used. But the immune system can also interfere with the shortcut as well as the long. So that's why it's important to quiet down any immune reactivity to nutrients that the body needs. And again, just to reiterate, the more toxic you get, the more retention you have of toxins. And these can come from not digesting food, as you've mentioned. People have gut issues. They have dysbiosis, bad bacteria in the gut. The bad bacteria like to attach to the lining, is what I say, and that creates these little holes. So you can be eating your food, and undigested food is going to leak through the holes of the gut. That goes into the bloodstream as a larger protein. And if you have a high enough density of that, because you're toxic, you're not getting rid of your estrogens, you may be drinking too much alcohol, you have other issues, all of that's not clearing the liver. Now you reach a certain density of toxic retention, kind of like what I tell patients, a cloudy aquarium. When it gets cloudy enough, now that white blood cell is going to take a look at what is floating around here. And if it starts to recognize that chicken that you eat every day, that you're not digesting because you have leaky gut and it's going through, into the bloodstream. That's how you train your body to develop immune sensitivities, and you wouldn't know. How come a person doesn't know these things? I will often test a patient and they go, well, gee, I eat chicken all the time and I didn't know I'm testing sensitive to it. Well, the white blood cell we have carries histamine. Think about that. And imagine if a person has 100 things that their immune system is sensitized to that it's going off on. That white blood cell is never going to get a chance to fill up with histamine because it's constantly squeezing that histamine out. So it never gets a chance to refill. Now you start to lower all the things that the immune system is reacting. You go from 100 to 5 or 100 to 10. Now we have more histamines waiting to be squirted out into the body to call the inflammatory white blood cells to the site. Now you'll feel a reaction. So most of the time when patients come see me and they get evaluated, they say, wow, I didn't know I had that. I don't have any symptoms that I'm aware of. But as we detox them, as we desensitize them from all the things that make them inflamed, now they go back, because everybody's going to backpedal and go, well, I shouldn't be eating this, but I had some. And then they go, whoa, I felt something. I didn't feel good. Wow, that's never happened before. Why? You've never detoxed enough to actually allow your white blood cells to fill up with histamine. And the histamine is what's going to give you that symptom. That's why it's a silent inflammation, because we can have so many things that our immune system is diluted so that we don't really feel it. We may just feel like, okay, maybe it's age. My recovery time isn't as good. I'm more ascetic. You may not even know you're more ascetic. You just catch colds all the time. These are some of the symptoms that we think the doctors go, you're getting older. What do you expect? That's not the case at all. You can really optimize your energy so that even if you're on medication, even if you have autoimmune thyroid, there's a lot to be said for oxygen to get to the cells and iodine to get to the cells that it can't, because there's so much toxins around the cells and they block these nutrient receptor sites that we need. So
it's just fascinating. There's so many things. As I was jotting down some notes to discuss, but some of them were already gone because you went into another area. So for the listener who is like, okay, fascinated by some of this, but some may feel over their head, the silent inflammatory part. So how does somebody, when we know the immune system is there to, we get a version of where our body stores toxins, but yet you shared with me in depth that our body, we think that it stores toxins in our fat cells. Well, if we're pretty lean and I'm around 11 to 12% body fat, then where is it possible to store those toxins? Obviously in other areas. And can you allude to how that does that? And I'm also fascinated by how protective and brilliant that is to create a real blowout crisis, like an all-out, complete breakdown versus it's a form of breakdown, but it's covering it up for now.
Yeah, your immune system functions with toxins to prevent them to go to the brain. So they want to recognize what's foreign, attach that, bind it, and cause your body to store it. Now, if you go to a regular health food store and say, I want to do a detox, what is it? It's going to be colon cleanse or something, and they're thinking, because I eliminate through the colon, that must be where I need to detox, or a liver cleanse because my liver functions, but that's the colon and liver are not the only areas that need cleansing. And doing a colon or a liver cleanse is not going to cleanse your brain. It's not going to cleanse your tissues, breast tissue, prostate, the other glands that you have, thyroid, adrenals. I see toxic thyroid. Toxic adrenals. I see toxic reproductive systems in men and women. Skin and lymphatics and circulation. So your body can store toxins. And yes, fat cells also store toxins. People try to lose weight. They hit they hit a curve or a wall where they can't lose any more weight, that's because they haven't done any detox, and that fat cell is not going to release water because doing so makes the toxins more concentrated. In fact, the purpose of that fat and cellulite is to dilute the toxins. So the immune system plays a part in also derailing your ability to detox. So by protecting you from, you had a farmed raised salmon or something that has lots of heavy metals, your body's going to go, my God, what do I do with all these heavy metals if they're not going to the liver? Well, it's going to start to store them. Yeah, it's going to store more in the colon because there's more lymphatics in the colon than anywhere else in the body. So that's an easy way to store it, and it'll eventually go to the kidneys. But you can start to absorb it in your tissue. When you have too much of that, and there's not enough clearance, and it's like that cloudy aquarium, then the immune system is going to recognize these toxins. Could be your prescription medication. It could be your vitamins. It could be pathogens you've killed, your die-off from your candida or bacterial infections, these types of things. Any type of food additive, chemical, pesticide, all of those things have to be eliminated. So if the immune system recognizes, for example, the mercury in your food, like methylmercury, if it's in seafood, then what it does is it really earmarks it to be stored. It definitely takes it out of circulation, and it will resist anything you try to do. Okay, I'm going to take a metal detox. I'm going to try cilantro. I'm going to try, chlorella. Well, you're not detox. You may not detox, or you may even get sick from it. And when you get sick, that's a sign that it's mobilizing, it's bringing it out into the bloodstream and the lymphatic circulation. And now, because the metals are floating there and the immune system recognizes it, inflammation happens wherever that is. And you can have symptoms from, I've got a headache, I've got brain fog, I've got aching, because that's where all the metals are. Your immune system is going to wherever they are, from painful kidneys, headache, and all of that. And so that's a sign that your immune system is interfering with your ability to detox. And some people quit. They go, I can't. I went to a doctor. I tried it on my own. It makes me sick. And then other people say, you got to get sick to get better. No. If things are working right, you don't feel the detox. You may be a little tired because it takes a lot of energy to do that, but you don't have symptoms. No headache, no brain fog, no body aches, nothing like that.
Right.
So that's the proper way of being able to detox. So I hope to answer the question about toxins and the immune system interfering, because that starts the ball rolling for why people develop inflammatory conditions.
Well, it does, by the way. It answers it quite well. There's a lot of depth to that. But how we end up dealing with that in our offices, like other chiropractors and other natural health care providers, is there's still this superficial kind of understanding about our immune system's there. This process is going on. It's going to take care of this. And at times there's a blind faith that it's being done, right? It's like, hey, I'm eating healthy, therefore I am. And it's almost like the river of denial. Now, it's not always conscious. And so I understand and respect it, because also, how our minds are working, how we're thinking, how we see the world does have a huge impact on what we express. At the same time, that's where I think the rubber meets the road here, is where we have to have a nice balance with understanding when the body's not efficiently doing its work. And what's fascinating about what you just discussed was the immune system is always there. It's so powerful. It has the capacity. And yet when it's in a crisis mode, it just says, dude, I'm bearing down. This is what I'm hearing, at least. Correct me if I'm wrong. That I got to bear down and shut this whole thing down just to keep you going, which means now in the short run, it's actually working against you. And you don't want to see that your immune system's working against you, because everything is positive. And that's where I think we have a breakdown. We have a big gap in terms of what it's actually doing, and then all of a sudden what it is doing. And you go, whoa. So these things got in the way, which then caused this new software to run, which is crisis management and holding things in. And if you don't have symptoms, you're good. But that's not the case. So aside from this being potentially fearful, that's not the goal, is to put a scare in somebody. The goal is to say, if somebody's struggling with certain things and they feel like they're doing the right things, like eating healthy, juicing, they might be intermittent fasting, they might be doing a monthly or an annual cleanse, and it's just like, so what are you still experiencing? How do they measure some of that? I mean, because by the time you see a patient, they're pretty sick, right? In many cases.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I do see athletes also, and people who don't have any chronic condition, but they notice certain things and they're wondering, what's going on. To add another layer to this, to also answer that question, is we all have a lot of toxins in this world, and more so now than 100 years ago. And I'm seeing everybody needing to be efficient at detox, because there's nobody I've tested, healthy or not, who doesn't have some degree of toxic retention. And what does that mean? That means your body was not efficient at getting rid of it. And the biggest factor that affects our body's ability to detox, besides our genetics, is also the minerals that we have in our system. And toxins cause us to need certain minerals more than others. So we become high octane machines needing, and I say, like a Ferrari is not going to take your 87 gas, whatever, cheapo stuff. So we're Ferrari engines, and we need certain nutrients to fuel the liver's pathway. And if you don't, and by the time you get a symptom, you've gone down that road for so long that liver really hasn't been given what it needed. And it will rob it from other areas. The common thing I tell people when they're dealing with heavy metals, or they're trying to chelate heavy metals, it's going to pull out magnesium. Magnesium is the number one mineral that's going to be the rate limiting factor for your liver. And how would you know you're having a magnesium deficiency? Well, you're going to run to your chiropractor, because you're going to say, my neck is so stiff, my shoulders hurt, I've got really tight forearms, thumb, even maybe your thenar eminence there. Your liver will pull out magnesium from your tissues, and this is where it first starts to suffer. It's like a trigger point right away. And then the question is, what kind of magnesium does the person need? And that's a whole nother discussion in and of itself. But taking magnesium can help that, and also improve chiropractic holding of, preventing subluxations, holding adjustments. So a patient who's really toxic, who's not getting the minerals that they need, is going to have more frequent subluxations on top of all of that. But what a patient can do if they're not sure and they think they're healthy, just do the hair mineral analysis, because that way you will know, are you walking towards a condition? Because if you have imbalanced minerals, that can cause you to develop insulin resistance. That can cause you to develop adrenal fatigue. And people think, oh, it's just stress and everything else outside, and then I get the condition. No, your mineral imbalance can fuel the brain fog, the adrenal problem, the liver issue, and all of that. And that's why we have to look at that, because that's an individual base, case by case. We look at what the minerals they need, because supplements in the store are all balanced. But if we take balanced minerals, they're not geared towards specific detox. And even then, you can't just make a supplement for detox, because you have to take into fact their genetic defects. Some can't take certain forms. So if a patient wants to say, okay, let's just check, see how I'm doing. I think I'm doing good. I think I'm juicing correctly. I think I'm eating correctly. Let's do the hair mineral analysis, and it will say, wow, derail. You need to course correct now, or you're going to be walking towards this direction. So I don't chelate, I don't detox, I don't stress the body further until I really know how empty is their gas tank on these minerals. Okay. Plus, living in a stressful world, zipping back and forth, having family, kids, stress consumes alkaline minerals. So our lifestyle, our diet, if our diet is more carbohydrate vegans, these things consume our alkaline minerals. And if that happens, the liver doesn't get what it needs. So the lifestyle can deplete our minerals so that our liver doesn't get what it needs. And so then the byproduct, we're down that line of developing inflammatory conditions.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that that's one of the keys that we stress as well, is it's individualized. It's so hard. People will say, well, should I be taking this because I have the symptom? No, actually, it doesn't mean you need that nutrient until you actually know where your deficiencies are and where you might have, dare I say, genetic SNPs that interfere with that pathway, that interfere with methylation and your ability to methylate. And doesn't long-term stress also affect where that methylation is today versus where it was 5 years and 10 years ago?
Absolutely.
So, I love that. So if somebody's interested in getting some work done or they need questions answered, we could just keep going. This is awesome. But I also want to respect your time. And we're doing pretty good. However, what is there anything other than, so like how does blood work contribute, or let's say a 24-hour UA or saliva? I mean, what other things other than hair analysis? Because I know that definitely shows some really cool things. Is there other comparative tests?
Yeah, a lot of time. So to understand functional medicine markers versus Western medicine, the allopathic model, a lot of times the patients say, I'll go ask my doctor to check my adrenals. Now, your doctor, MD, is going to look for disease. So he's going to do blood work on adrenal. And unless you've got Addison's or something really bad, he's going to say your adrenals are fine. That's not the case in functional medicine. Functional medicine has lab tests that are not necessarily approved for diagnosis of disease, but they're markers to see, are you optimizing your function? So, for example, the blood test for adrenal is for disease only. The saliva test and the saliva is so important. We use saliva to look at sex hormones. If somebody has been given HRT, I would almost say
hormone replacement therapy.
There could be over 50% of people who are given more than what they need. And that means they're pushing them towards the cancer. So saliva for estrogen, saliva for cortisol, because saliva measures tissue availability. Saliva in estrogen would show how much estrogen is in the tissue because it stays in tissue much longer than blood. So we can tell, and tissue estrogen is what causes the cancer. So, and the cortisol, we do a test at different times of the day because you actually have a biorhythm. There's a curve. And so if you were to just do a blood test at 12 o'clock at noon, that wouldn't tell you if you have low cortisol in the morning or high cortisol at night. And if you had low cortisol in the morning, you can't wake up, and high at night, you can't go to sleep, and you've got the munchies, So all of that wouldn't tell you anything. So there's a big difference in the functional medicine markers. And so you've got saliva tests. There are blood tests. For example, we do free testosterone and free T3. Free T3 is the thyroid hormone. So I don't know why Western medicine is not yet routinely testing. They only test total T3. Now, total T3 means you're including thyroid that is bound by an antigen. And free T3 is what your cells have available that is not bound by an antibody. So really, I don't care about your total T3. I want to know what is your body available to use? How much thyroid hormone is available for your body to use? Free T3 is not an expensive test, and otherwise you don't have access to it. And here's another thing. If you had say you had a low normal free T3 level, you could still have all the symptoms of low thyroid because you don't have enough iodine in the body. So iodine attaches to the cell, and it's like a straw that allows free T3 to get inside. And if you don't have enough iodine on the receptor site, the cell goes hungry. Okay. And if you have a lot of toxins, and bromide is in white flour, and do we eat white flour? Do Americans eat white flour?
Iron fortified white flour.
Exactly. So they're getting bromide, and bromide loves to compete with the iodine receptor site. So now you have bromide sticking in a site where iodine should be, and now we can't access our thyroid. And we have an epidemic of inflammatory thyroid conditions. And even though people are on thyroid medication, the doctors who don't practice functional medicine aren't even evaluating that piece of the puzzle to give them more energy by giving the body what it needs, iodine. Plus, Americans are not seaweed eaters by and large, where there's high iodine. We, like Asian countries don't have the same type of thyroid problems we do because of their diet. And so that's a big difference. So there's certain things that we look at that really go down to the fundamental basics of how does the body use a hormone, and where does this hormone go, and if this hormone isn't metabolized right, will it cause a problem? And we look at those markers. And so that's what functional medicine is, and the labs for that, including neurotransmitters. That's another one, urine neurotransmitters. So we see a lot of people, and I don't understand why it's not a routinely accepted test, but it shows how we metabolize serotonin and dopamine and norepinephrine. And if our serotonin is low in a urine neurotransmitter test, it's suggestive that we're not making enough serotonin. So why not help the patient make serotonin? But first, I check, what if their immune system is reacting to serotonin? So now it's going to block it. And if the doctor gives them something to take, I have the same thing, doctors giving a patient cortisol because they're low and they react. They see me. Why? Because their immune system's reacting to cortisol. We have to turn that off. So how can that happen? Sometimes taking medication that you don't digest, that goes through the leaky gut, then you train yourself to develop a problem with your supplements, your iodine, your cortisol, your thyroid, your estrogen. And now that's derailing your ability to use it, and it's making you more toxic in the very substance that you need.
Oh, that's powerful. It's just kind of like you're increasing that toxic load. You're frustrated with, you might get a temporary change. This is what I see, at least. The patterns are the patient gets a short-term change, like, hey, this worked for a little bit. And all of a sudden it stopped working, and then everything was right back because all it did is shift things temporarily for the body to distract it enough, theoretically, and then it's now got to deal with a greater toxic load.
Right. And the body has a wisdom in terms of how it wants to eliminate things. And a really good example is heavy metals. So heavy metals, aluminum has a great affinity for our brain. It loves to go to our brain more than anywhere else. And there are only a certain supplement that has an affinity for aluminum to pull that out. And when we're trying to get rid of heavy metals, if we're not doing the right kind of detox for this specific type of metal, then you're not getting rid of aluminum. If you're chelating mercury, you're not necessarily pulling out aluminum. And it takes an expert to really know that, and also taking a look and knowing how much of the other heavy metals that you have. You could have too much lead, and lead will make chelating mercury, meaning mobilizing and eliminating mercury from your body, impossible, because lead is highly reactive. It's kind of like a nuclear reactor when those two are together. And so that's a very bad sign. Even myself, I did stained glass when I was in high school. And so when I got to be a young adult, I realized I had to get mercury out, chelate, and I got sick from it. My doctors made me sick from it, and we couldn't figure out why. And it wasn't until years later that I learned Dr. Gordon. He's like the chelating doctor who understood a lot about detoxing lead and did a lot of research in lead, and learning that lead had to come out first. And then the body has other hierarchies. So we're able to do, as you said, 24-hour urine if the chelating agent goes through the kidney. If it doesn't, and its main agency is through the stool, then you have to do a fecal metal test because the two won't be the same at all. And so this way we can see and plot. There's actually a curve. They call it a bell curve. And you can see, for example, arsenic will reach a peak and it'll start to go down. And as soon as arsenic goes down, then other metals are allowed to release. And so we see these different curves. And we used to plot them every 2 weeks for autistic kids because we could see exactly where they were on the curve of eliminating metals. And if you suddenly stop eliminating metals, that doesn't mean you don't have any. You could have stirred up more metals than you could get rid of. And when you stir up anything into that cloud, that aquarium, that cloudy aquarium, that's when the immune system can recognize it, and boom, you're back into storage mode and you're not excreting. And all you're doing when you take a chelator is creating inflammation.
Okay, so that's a huge point. And I know it's an art that's probably not being practiced much anymore, or at least it's tough, right? Yeah. Made by a certain group in the world. And if this is frankly speaking, that would be the AMA. So that said, what happens if someone's at home, they have a child that's Asperger's, they're in the spectrum, they've tried things, they don't necessarily know where to go, there's all kinds of information out there. I have access to a ton, and yet there's certain things that I've learned, like in the last 72 hours, that were eye-opening to already a paradigm of holism, right? Mm-hmm. That was like already there. It's like, wow, okay. So that can fly below the radar. How does somebody, like, when the body is going through that, how can they manage some of this to the point? How do they know when they've exceeded their own ability to do that? Like
that's the key word you just said, is managing. And that's the other thing. When I talk about the body has a wisdom, the body also wants to manage things in a hierarchy. Okay. And I tell patients, when you find out you're hitting a wall in terms of dealing with an issue, and sometimes I have to say, when we have an issue or a symptom, we want to get rid of that, and we become tunnel vision to say, I just want to get rid of candida, I just want to get rid of this, I just want to do this, I just need to get rid of heavy metals. But the body can't do that unless you do this A, B, and C. And how I explain it is to say, you can't get into the closet in your room and clean your closet if you've got too much crap in the bedroom. So the body has to deal with all the crap in the bedroom before it allows you to go into the closet. Now, how does this apply? I have people who have labs that show they have mycotoxin infection, Lyme disease, candida, bacteria dysbiosis, and the doctors are loading them up with killers, and they're getting sick. They're dying from the cure. And the deal is they need to slow down. Yes, we know we need to kill, but the body has to clean up at a rate also. So there's a rate in which they can do things. And patients will get a little freaked out that, I want it gone now. You can't just kill everything, because you're going to make yourself so toxic that it could take you a year or longer to recover from it. Or you're going to flunk out of the doctor's treatment program. Unfortunately, the biggest weakness in a lot of doctors who give patients things to kill is they're not supporting detox. They don't understand detox, and they're not tailoring detox for their patients' genetic limitations and immune limitations. They don't even see that. They just give them something, kill it, and they should be fine. Not at all. Not especially if you're chronic. So if you feel like you're juggling and navigating, if you feel like you can't take this medication, you're reacting to this supplement. I've seen 150 doctors and I can't take anything they're saying. It's not you, it's not them. They may have a very good protocol, but your immune system and how you're wired, your metabolism and your detox has never been addressed to manage that. And that has to be reset. And therefore, then put in a certain, hierarchy of training. Just like training for Olympics, you can't just go, boom, I'm going to go do this. You've got to get yourself ready. So that's the same thing. It's exercising your metabolic muscles, but you've got to give it the nutrients. You can't have the interference and all that.
Yeah, my head's spinning just a bit.
Yeah.
You don't get very excited or passionate about this stuff, do you?
No, never. No.
What were you going to say?
At a patient is I have a computerized system to test. I test with blood from the patient finger stick. I look at the computer. My research has evolved to where I have antigen that are stored on the computer and in vials where I can test the patient to see if their immune system is reactive. And so that gives me a very good tool for looking into the body to see, is there an immune component that's preventing the person from metabolizing what they need, or is their immune system not reacting to a pathogen that it needs to react? Because a lot of times it fatigues to that and habituates. So I see that. So with that system of evaluation, I can tell a patient, all right, this is how you've been derailed. This is good, but, and this derailment self-perpetuates every 90 days. If you don't change it, it continues on and it gets worse because as your toxic load increases, you get more and more things that the immune system is reacting to.
So this brings up a question with comfort foods and how most people eat. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems as though they have staples and they pretty much stick to a group. Like there's patients that will have, they'll hover around, I eat this vegetable and this vegetable. Give me the range of vegetables. Well, it's maybe 3, it may be 5, it may be 2, maybe 10. Point is, there's this pattern of food going in. How do we become aware that the use of certain foods over and over and over and over and over again do what for the body? What do they do to create a deeper issue? Because the patients oftentimes feels like they're stuck, right? They're stuck in that, like, this is all I can have, but then I create this other problem.
Right. I think a lot of patients do understand that they've got to heal their gut. And I give them the stool test from Doctor's Data microbiology stool. I call it the gut report card because what it does is it identifies and quantifies the probiotics. So a patient can say, I take probiotics. Well, the science of probiotics has really gone to an advanced degree. Just because you take something over the counter doesn't mean that you have enough of it, and you may not even have the right strains of probiotics. There's specific strains that are not just even for their gut. They're for women's reproductive. There's lung probiotics for upper respiratory. If you were a C-section baby, you're missing certain probiotics that you never got that now they're giving patients. There's so much there. So we need to know. And why is probiotics so important? Because they help the body make certain cofactors in B12 that if they're not there, then you also have room for the dysbiotic bacteria. I call it the weeds. It's like if you've got dandelion, poor dandelion, it's a good herb.
Right. It's a bad rap.
But if you've got a whole bunch of dandelion on a Kentucky bluegrass lawn, then you're not going to have that nice lawn. And that's the same thing. The more you have dysbiotic, the less you have good probiotics. And the dysbiotics in the gut actually will go to joints, to brain. They'll cause brain fog, brain inflammation. In children, they can affect from throat, ear, nose, and throat infections. They can go across the temporal lobe, especially strep, and they can go into the brain. So we do see that. And they can affect auditory and verbal processing, or just ADD and ADHD, ability to to focus. They can affect joints in adults, hip replacement. So you have chronic joint inflammation from strep. I see it all the time. And this strep is resistant to antibiotics. No doctors are testing it. They don't look at that, generally, unless they're functional. So having that gut marker will tell us how likely are you to have this leaky gut. If you've got bad bacteria, yeast or candida, then you do have leaky gut. And also your diet. I work with a nutritionist who's trained with the kind of work that I do. Many nutritionists don't even appreciate lectins. Lectins create leaky gut, and they are a big cause for inflammation and weight gain. So staying away from, and so many foods are high in, think about your apple, the peel, high in lectin. So how many people peel their, apples? I didn't for years. I thought the peel was good, Big difference, very big difference, even in creating hunger. So these things that we think are good can contribute as we're unaware, because what we do every day can either become our medicine or our poison, and we're not aware. So the leaky gut side and alternating. And also we teach patients, like when you talk about vegetables and they can only eat 2 things, we teach them, what vegetables are you sensitive to and why? And we see people who have inherited a mild sulfur defect, they're sensitive to the sulfurs in the vegetables. Fibromyalgia patients, everyone I've seen pretty much, sensitive to mineral salts. Well, vegetables are high in mineral salts, so they're not going to like vegetables because that's going to become a crystal in their body and create problems. So we have to turn off the immune sensitivity to mineral salts to allow their body to take that in. You can't just go through life tiptoeing away from it because your body needs those mineral salts to repair, to detox. Otherwise, besides fibromyalgia, you're going to have cancer. You're going to have other issues, high estrogen, other things start to cascade. So in terms of food, don't be satisfied to say, I'm existing on this and this is all I'm going to eat, because also you're going to create a sensitivity to it. But understand, why is it that you can't eat these other foods? It's not just you developed an allergy to it. There may be an immune-based metabolic condition that, unless we test and see, you wouldn't know that is the cause. It's a component in there. So here's a good example of what I tell a patient. You go to your Western doctor and you say, I want to get a test to see what food allergies I have. They come back, and you know that when you drink a glass of orange juice, you are not well. You can't handle it. You either get acid reflux or you get eczema or something. So you look at your lab and it goes, no orange allergy. You're like, what? I know.
Right.
No orange allergy. Well, an immune sensitivity is not tested the same thing as an allergy. An immune sensitivity, what is an orange? An orange is a bioflavonoid. An orange is citric acid. An orange is vitamin C. It's not just the phenol. So in a food allergy component, you're testing phenols. But in an immune sensitivity, you could be reacting to citric acid. And this could be why you have acid reflux and have to take antacids, because you can't handle the citric acid in orange or tomatoes. So by turning that off, that's where your immune system is interfering with your body's ability to use these foods, and it creates an immune sensitivity to orange, and that's how it develops. That's an example. And we want to educate patients about that.
So on that note, so they go to their doctor, and their doctor says, because that's where they trust, their doctor says, well, and let's say the patient just said, well, you're only testing phenols, and I need you to test bioflavonoids and the citric acid and all these other things. And they say, well, those aren't common allergies, so that's why that's not tested, because we don't see them as relevant. And this is where there's this headbutting about the experts that are treating disease, and they do it in this cookbook fashion. And then there's this look at the body as an individual and look at the wholeness of it and go, what's it trying to do? Right. So I love I'm fascinated by the homeostatic mechanism, that this went to another layer, like I said, over this last weekend, where you start to realize that homeostatically it's so brilliant at trying to protect itself that it'll just destroy itself in the process of keeping it alive today in this moment.
Right. And actually, from what I've tested and seen, I see more immune sensitivities, food sensitivities, than I do food allergies. And why are those reversible? That's because they are prompted by your toxic load. Here's an example. You may wake up one day and all of a sudden you've got sinus congestion, you're sneezing, and now suddenly you go to the doctor and he says, oh, ragweed, you got a ragweed allergy. Well, did you get hit by a ragweed fairy when you were sleeping? Bam, I woke up, it's my turn to have ragweed allergy. How did you wake up one day with ragweed allergy? You added it to your toxic load. You got to a certain threshold, and now your immune system recognized it. And it could have been adding to the beer and the pizza and everything else that you weren't digesting. And then you add one more layer, and boom, it can't handle it. And now your immune system's recognizing that. But it can be reversed. It can be eliminated by detoxing. And so you don't have to be on medications, and you can turn these immune sensitivities to food away so that you're not compensating with just an antacid and tiptoeing around foods. You don't have to live like that if you understand the body. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's where we're really heading here. Is there's all kinds of ways to measure these problems now that people are getting more exposed to this. You want to find somebody that actually is competent and qualified to be able to look and address and has experience to do that. Anna, you have had, I was referred to you, but you've cared for some folks in my life and made a big difference. So I already trusted that. And so it's just been educational along the way. It's just beginning. Actually, I feel like this is just opening up. So the fascinating thing is, for those of you who hear this, there is hope, and there is a way to start solving some of that toxic load that you may be experiencing. And there's ways to determine what part of that, which is unique to you, which is why there's not just this, thing we can throw at the wall and say, yeah, you need A, you need B, you need vitamin D, you need E, you need all these doses. And you're literally, that's how someone is actually, I had a conversation with a patient today where literally that could be part of the toxic load here that we're up against, as to why, like, as a chiropractor, I see the connection with their inability to break through the basic stage of holding alignment because their body's so exhausted just keeping this thing up.
Right.
And I mean, structurally, it's an analogy, but it just fits to the fact that there's this energy loss, right? It's like leaky buckets, and your body's just fighting its way doing it, and it'll keep you out of symptoms in many cases, but some people have plenty of those symptoms to help track it down.
Well, inflammation is degenerative in the sense that when you think of inflammation, think of that white blood cell holding on to some nutrient that your spine needs, your discs need, the synovial fluid need. It's not getting there. Your glands need, your cells need, and if it's marshaling it out and it's hoarding it, you're not getting it. So every day you have to regenerate and repair, and you can't. And then at some point, this degenerative patient is not going to respond to supplements, to medication, or even chiropractic. They're not going to respond to this stuff because chemically they can't. They're starved. So what I say, it's like your nutritional, you have a cellular malnutrition. You can be eating wonderful organic foods in the quantities you need, but you have cellular malnutrition, and we identify what that is. Because when it reaches a certain threshold, you're going to start to develop symptoms. Just because it goes in the mouth doesn't mean it's going in the cell.
Oh, no, I eat plenty of protein. No, I get it. I eat bratwurst in Wisconsin. And bratwurst is awesome, by the way. But I get it, and that's probably one of the biggest challenges that Dr. Heather and I, as we've evolved with our practice because of things that happened in our life and patients and what we've attracted in terms of all these different types of challenges. But there's this uncovering that's been going on with that part that is, over the last 20 some years, has allowed me to see that body differently, but also recognize why there's a more of a challenge structurally to hold and to just be structurally sound. And that is, I mean, as you said it earlier, the food quality, the fact that we have more stresses in our life, more toxicants, And our body's just so loaded now. I mean, just the EMF alone has been added on top of that, let alone.
Oh, yeah.
Our food quality has gotten to be what they are able to get away with, I should say, in putting in our food.
Right.
Which is not another, it's not another interview. It's another seminar.
That's right. I mean, just talk about the brain and degeneration of the brain. I mean, there's so many elements there, that we look at too. And what are patients' risks, because you've got brain, body, organ, glands, all feeding in, and you're only as healthy as your weakest link.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's been enlightening. So Anna, I'm sorry. Last thing. First of all, this has been fantastic, and I can't just stop at one. I want to have you back at least at some point to talk about, and see where kind of this evolves too with questions as they come up, and just what unfolds with it. But where can people find you? Number one.
They can call my office, which is the phone number's in the book, but it's 888-519-5755.
Okay, and I will have that in the show notes, so that'll be available when this podcast is published. Okay.
And I also have a blog where I write articles about what I'm talking about, detox and clinical findings, to give patients who are not close to me some information. Maybe this is a problem, and maybe your doctor didn't know, and sometimes there are tests you can do from afar. And that's chronic fatigue and nutrition.com.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Chronic fatigue and nutrition.com, and their book. Where can they find your book?
The book's on Amazon. You can also call our office and we can send that out. I designed the book for patients who couldn't necessarily come see me, to give them information, and my current patients, because they kept saying, could you give me more information? So eventually I said, okay, I'm going to have to write a book, because this explains the different areas of the body that we look at and why, and it explains that hidden element of how inflammation has an effect just on one subject, which is affecting your energy. And so that's why I wrote the book.
I love it. The book is great, and I've just dug into it. I'm not finished with it yet. But the writing style and your explanations are great. There's some awesome She's obviously practiced communicating with patients and honed down the message, kind of like the dirty aquarium. I mean, it starts to paint a picture that if the fish aren't as healthy when it's dirty, but they're swimming for now, and you keep the load going, or you overfeed them and they'll die. And we're overfed, right, as a population.
Right.
So thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it, even with the technical difficulties we had today. It was awesome. The jazz went just in time.
Yeah.
So thanks again, Anna, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hey guys, before you head out, I just want to thank you so much for listening, and I want you to remember, your health lies within. Support it, nurture it, and you will allow it to flow through you. Okay, my fellow health warriors, it's time to head over to iTunes, frankly speaking, drwade.com. There, you can rate, review, and subscribe, as well as share, so more of our brothers and sisters can grow to realize their voice and their health. Speaking up means you matter. We'll see you next time.